we realize and start to face the horrible truth that everything we've been told is a lie. Today, I'm no longer surprised, and I truly believe that every facet of our reality has been affected, manipulated, infiltrated, and poisoned with half-truths. It's not always completely a lie, but the best way to tell a lie is you keep a little bit of the truth and then you're surrounded by a lot of falsifications. Everything in creation spins and vibrates. Everything has its own prime resonance frequency. Everything. And this is why once we can identify a prime resonance frequency of a bacterium or an atom or whatever it is, or a soccer field, we can then manipulate that object with its prime resonance frequency. In Christianity, it's the word. In Hinduism, it's Om. The Egyptians believed the universe was sung into creation, and the original people of Australia, not the Aboriginal, so it's the original people of Australia, believed that the world was created with 3 sacred songs. And then we have the phenomenal similarities between the 6 days of creation in Christianity and the word that created everything, the 6 aspects of Om, and the 6 aspects of the all-seeing eye of Horus, and you start seeing the connections between all these ancient cultures and the creation stories. Sound is the source of all creation. Sound and resonance is responsible for everything. By now you should know that sound manifests physical form, and this is the most basic example. I just cannot get enough of it. I can watch it millions of times. Every frequency has its own specific shape, a prime resonance frequency. Are you only looking at a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional effect? I think he actually uses rice on a metal plate here. So the original people of Australia have a creation story that says time began when the supernatural beings awoke and broke through the surface of the earth. So imagine the surface of the earth being something like this, that metal plate being the surface of the earth, and the supernatural beings broke through the surface of the earth, and they created the surface of the earth with 3 sacred songs. This is from Hans Jenny's brilliant video, Cymatics. This is powder on a metal plate. It's not a liquid or a jelly, it's powder. You can see landscapes being formed here over extended periods of time. Mountains can form, valleys, volcanoes, all to do with the sound of the earth coming out of the earth. Now watch that. And then Eric Larson is the guy that created the Cymascope, and this is when you can suddenly see how the human voice has potential to create infinitely. That with our voice, we have the potential to create everything and anything we can imagine. That we are indeed creators. And remember, every thought you have also has a frequency and a vibration, has a resonance. Just like your voice. And some of these pictures, the images of this Cymascope images, tell us that it was these sounds, the images of the sound, that actually inspired religious symbols. That beautiful cross in a circle at the center of some of these cymatic photographs give us a very clear indication that the creators of the religious symbols knew exactly what they were talking about, that the source of creation is sound itself. And that takes us to what sound does. Sound pretty much does everything you can imagine because it's a source of creation. And this brings us to using sound as a tool in technology. Sound creates light. It's very obvious. We know that God said, let there be light, and you can do this yourself by attaching a speaker to an LED light and see what happens. Royal Raymond Rife, you should know by now, that with the man that found the cure for all disease with sound and resonance that were converted to electric impulses, and sound continues to amaze us. Sound can levitate. By now, you would have seen this many times. Just a very quick idea that sound actually does levitate things, but this is not how the ancients used to levitate the very big, heavy objects. This is a very different technique used here. This is just pressure waves that can levitate things, very light objects, but it does give you the ability to imagine that sound actually levitates. Sound creates hurricanes. There are two guys in 2003 that lodged a patent to create hurricanes out of sound, believe it or not. And I believe they were granted their patent to create hurricanes. And maybe this is how they create the weather for us, without us even realizing it. And this is where we start getting into the real understanding of some of the masters. And no matter how I look at it, how much research I do, I keep coming back to one guy that stands head and shoulders above all other researchers and inventors of, I don't know, for how many centuries. And that guy's name is Nikola Tesla. He says, if you want to find out the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That's exactly what I've been sharing with you here. Everything is sound and magneticism, and this is really important. So what most people don't know is, remember, sound, God said, let there be light. So it's sound, moving sound. Sound manifests as toroidal fields. Those moving toroidal fields create magnetic fields, which are toroidal fields as well. And moving magnetic fields create electricity. That's the sequence of events. This tells us that because sound creates magnetic fields, it means everything must have a must be magnetic in some sort. And in some sort of way. And if it's not, there's a very specific reason why it's not magnetic. So here's an example.
You might not think of water as being magnetic, but it is. And so are graphite, aluminum, and glass. Aluminum is a good example of a paramagnet. And so is oxygen, which is attracted to magnets. Here, I have a few milliliters of liquid oxygen which sticks to the magnet. I'll explain why later. Gadolinium oxide and cupric sulfate are good examples of paramagnetic substances. Cupric sulfate is a salt that can be picked up by a magnet.
Here is a picture of an electron. There's a picture taken about a decade ago. They tell us that this is a light beam or electron riding a light beam. Can you see a particle anywhere in this picture? No, there's no particle. They're resonant waves, and yet they tell us it's an electron. Can you see how we get brainwashed? So this is what Nikola Tesla has to say about the electron from an interview in 1928. On the whole subject of matter, in fact, Dr. Tesla holds the view that are startlingly original. He disagrees with the concept of atomic theory of matter and does not believe in the existence of an electron as pictured by science. This is a shock to the system, because we all think, electrons are real. And you start seeing an agenda being developed here, an agenda being developed by mainstream universities, the mainstream scientific fraternity, under the guidance of those that are trying to lie to us and make us believe things that are not so. This is what Einstein has to say about the electrons. In the theoretical treatment of these electrons, we are faced with the difficulty that electrodynamic theory itself is unable to give an account of their nature. For since electrical masses constituting the electron would necessarily be scattered under the influence of their mutual repulsion unless there are forces of another kind operating between them, the nature of which has hitherto remained obscure to us. So he says he doesn't quite understand how electrons come into being. And he tells us that millions of people all over the world are being fooled by the non-existing electron, and he has a lot more to say about this. And you start seeing that scientists and inventors and researchers over the last 200 years have been vehemently opposed to this whole concept of an electron and the atomic structure that has been forced down our throats and through all our educational institutions, that we just take for granted and we accept because we believe the guys that teach us this to be smart and and they're not lying to us. We just accept the stuff. So what are the stone circles all about? By now you can see that clearly we're dealing with cymatic patterns. Very obvious we're dealing with cymatic patterns. That's what every stone circle is. It's just a representation of the sound frequency that comes out of the earth at that specific point. That's what this is all about. And some of these cymatic, like sand on a metal plate, but now these are stones, right? Some of the structures are actually very distinct magnetrons. And of those flower shapes, every time you see a flower-shaped stone circle, it means they actually built an ancient giant magnetron like this. Magnetrons that can cut metal in a split second. And I asked two magnetron scientists, how much energy would a magnetron 40 meters in diameter generate? Remember that a tiny magnetron can create so much energy in a laser beam that cuts metal in a split second. I mean, it literally just melts the metal. Bzz. And the answer was that a magnetron that size would create more energy than all the power plants on Earth together combined. We have thousands of these magnetrons in southern Africa, thousands of them. So these guys are generating so much energy, it's insane. And we know this because we measured it. We measured the sound frequencies, the electromagnetic fields, the loudness in decibels. And it's just insane what's coming out of these stone circles. Adam's calendar is the most powerful of all these ancients of these stone circles. Adam's calendar is actually much, much more powerful. It's as if they all seem to be sending their frequencies to Adam's calendar, and that's like the collection point for all this, the energies created by all these millions of stone circles. That's what it seems like. So what we have at Adam's calendar is a very definite toroidal effect, and it's alive even today because we measured it. So when you look at ancient structures built out of stone, you realize that these guys knew exactly what they were doing. They understand that stone is the tool that carries with it, in it, information, storage capacity. It's an energy source, and that's why they used stone. Not because they were stupid, because they were very, very smart. We're the dumb ones, but we're catching up quite quickly. So what's very obvious now is that all these ancient structures, from the pyramids, Borobudur, etc., are all ancient machines. They were giant machines built out of stone, crystalline substance, to create or to perform specific functions. It's just the function that we haven't figured out. It's powered by the sound of the earth and activated by the movement of the sun. I mean, it's bloody brilliant. It's so simple. And now we're figuring this out, and we know that the energies are still there, because this is a photograph taken of the pyramids, and there's still huge energy coming out of the pyramids. Even the symmetrical patterns coming out of Stonehenge, although Stonehenge has been completely reconstructed, there are still very powerful symmetrical patterns coming out of Stonehenge that tells us that its original structure was very specifically created as a resonating device, an energy device. All this ancient stuff that we're dealing with, just like I said, these ancient machines are just advanced technology on a gigantic scale. These obelisks in Egypt, they ring like bells. If you listen to them, they ring like bells, just like those stones in my museum. And when you go into these temples in Egypt, you know, we're told that they were built for this and offering. That's all nonsense, offering and praying. It's just too many pillars, not enough space. When you look at them from this angle, you realize that this is just something very different. And all those pillars clustered together, why would they build them like that? And then the more I looked at it, the more I realized, now inspired by realizing that the stone circles were powerful energy generating devices, suddenly seeing aerial photographs of these temples in Egypt, I realized that they weren't temples, but they were actually templates. That we're actually looking at gigantic energy circuits, circuit boards on a gigantic scale that we could never have imagined. It's just beyond our imagination. The scale that these guys were building things on is something way out of our perception, because we just don't have enough money to do that. And macro processors, gigantic microprocessors become gigantic macro processors. You know, and here we are told that these were places of worship, and then this is where the people lived. No, these are giant bloody macro processors, and that's part of the circuit board. You know, it's what it is. And you can start seeing that the pyramids were the same thing, giant powerhouses, creating huge amounts of energy. And just, you start seeing things and recognizing how all this fits into ancient history. Saksai Huaman is also just a giant circuit board. When you look at images from the air, you realize it's just a giant circuit board. It's not a fortress on top of a mountain to ward off marauding crowds and guys on horses and spears. No, it's a giant circuit board.
Our foods that we buy off the shelves are filled with poisons and toxins. And Monsanto is by far the world's largest controller of food that reaches our shelves. The genetically modified seeds and the control that Monsanto has taken over the world is potentially devastating for the future ability of humanity to grow our own food.
We were talking last week about some of the stuff that is subsidized in America agriculturally, and it's all the stuff that goes into making the worst kinds of food. It's not beets and broccoli.
So as much as we might have reached a really dangerous situation with Monsanto controlling large quantities of seeds and genetically modified seeds, and they own the rights to those seeds, by the way, as well. So if you accidentally grow their seeds on your farm without a license, you go to jail or they confiscate your farm.
A Canadian scientist has been caught in an Aaron Brockovich-like moment when he's asked to defend that chemical against links to cancer rates in Argentina. Take a look.
Do not believe that glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. You can drink a whole quart of it and it won't hurt you.
You want to drink some? We have some here.
I'd be happy to, actually, but not really. But
not really.
I know it wouldn't hurt me.
If you say so, I have some glyphosate.
No, I'm not stupid.
Okay. So you.
No, but I know
so
that
it's dangerous, right?
I know people try to commit suicide with it and fail fairly regularly.
Tell the truth.
It's not dangerous to humans. No, it's not.
So you're ready to drink one glass of glyphosate?
No, I'm not an idiot.
Food is making us sick. And the reason for this is because we no longer eat healthy food. Because of what's been happening, the rising costs that people don't grow their food anymore, and the rising costs of production and labor, fast food has become a very quick and easy way for us to get fed. And that is a huge problem for the world, because fast food is not even food. We don't even know what to call it anymore. If you look at some of the examples of some of the major brands where they've taken the hamburgers and food that they create and they leave them exposed for years and years, not even the bugs and the bacteria get to the food. Nothing eats that. And this is what we buy and put into our bodies.
In Europe, only 5% of the food is genetically modified. Here, it's 70%.
We are poisoning ourselves voluntarily because we don't know what's going on. Well, now that you know this, you'll start thinking about this very differently. And this poisoning and attack on humanity goes a lot further. Anything else we didn't agree to as human beings? The fluoride in our water that makes us sick on every possible level, on so many levels, especially our pineal gland. A pineal gland in our brains that is affected by fluoride in the water.
We're all on medication right now. Did you use toothpaste with fluoride today? It blocks your pineal gland. And they put children on it, and we put our kids on it. It's inside the deodorants that we use. It's all these things to create like a disconnect.
Why would they want to make us sick? It's very obvious. Follow the money. Who controls the medicine? The bankers, once again. They would make us sick because medicine is a huge industry. By keeping people sick, you keep selling them medicine that makes them even more sick. Just look at the side effects of the medicine. Take out the leaflet out the next time you buy some medicine. Read the side effects on it. Just reading it makes you sick. Why is the world divided like this? It is not by accident. All of this is by very meticulously planned action. It is all done by design through the control systems that run our world. All you got to do at all times is follow the money. You'll get to the top and discover the Rothschild banking empire and their cronies, the banking families, and what is often referred to as the royal political elite. These families that control the world did not suddenly come into power in the last 100 years. We're talking about thousands of years of royal bloodline control of the world. The Rothschilds and the other banking families pretty much own all the central banks of the world. This is a shock to the system. The central banks of the world, like the Federal Bank of America, the Bank of England, the South African Reserve Bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia, India, Brazil, all the central banks of all the countries of the world do not belong to the people. They are owned private entities that are controlled and owned by the Rothschild banking empire. And they set the norms, the rules, and the financial policies for the countries. And they lend money to the countries, the governments and the presidents and the prime ministers and the ruling parties of the different countries. And this is why we are constantly trapped in a cycle of debt, because the banks that print our money do not belong to its people. What is money really? Well, money is just an idea. It's a piece of paper. It's a tool of enslavement. And what you will learn here is that money is not something that evolved over thousands of years of bartering and trading as a tool that can help humanity prosper. No, it's exactly the opposite. Money was a tool of enslavement that was conjured up a long time ago and introduced as a complete and whole philosophy and a tool of enslavement. It's just a piece of paper that controls our lives. It burns and disappears. Where did money come from? How did money originate? Very few people are actually aware of this. Well, about 6,000 years ago, the first money appeared in the form of clay tablets. This is during the Sumerian Empire. Well, the Sumerian texts tell us about when money first appeared, and also when the first royal bloodlines first appeared, and we find the emergence of the first kings, or the so-called first priest kings. And it just so happens that these first priest kings that appeared out of the blue on earth suddenly created all the banks, they created their temples, and in their temples they started to print these clay tablets, which became the first forms of money. So in essence, the temples of these first kings that appeared on earth were the first banks from which the first forms of money were distributed to the people. And nothing has changed in thousands of years. This is really important. So what if I told you that banks create money out of thin air? Would you be surprised? Well, that's exactly what happens. They have nothing. Money is absolutely useless. It is a piece of paper. It has no backing, and this is why it's called fiat currency, fiat money. It means nothing. It is valueless. It has no value. The only reason it has value is because we, the people, think it has value, and it's given to us as a piece of paper that has some sort of value, and we trade it and use it and go around and kill each other for it and rob banks for it and go to jail for it and do... It controls our lives from the first moment we are born to the last moment as we die. Money controls our lives. Many famous people and smart people and businessmen of the past have been aware of this for a long time. Like this quote from Henry Ford, for example. He said, "It's well that the people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." Henry Ford. Many people, many great leaders of the past have resisted money, have resisted the bankers. JFK tried to break America free from the Federal Bank, Federal Reserve Bank stranglehold on the people of the United States. This is a quote 7 days from before he died. He says, "There is a plot in the country to enslave every man, woman and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot." 7 days later, he died. What you need to know is JFK actually started to print what became known as the American or the United States note, which is not printed by the Federal Reserve Bank, and therefore taking the control away from the Fed. As soon as they assassinated him in Dallas in 1963, within 2 weeks or so, the Fed started to print the American money again, taking that control back. And this happened also with Abraham Lincoln, who 100 years before that started to print the greenback in the United States, making the American people free of all debt. And the greenback was printed by the government. It didn't belong to the Federal Bank of the Rothschild Empire. This was obviously not liked, and they lost control. This is why they shot him and got rid of him, because he didn't play their game. Who controls our governments? Who controls the bankers? Who controls what's going on here? Many people around the world call these the puppet masters. We don't know who they are because they don't want us to know who they are. quote from Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the founding father of the Rothschild Empire in the 1700s. He says, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." And that's exactly what has become of the world and our countries. Because through the banking institutions, they control everything. Think about how money and the bankers control all the education systems, the research laboratories, how they control industry, the large corporations. Everything imaginable ultimately goes back to those who control the money. Follow the money and you'll see the root of evil and the root of control as it unfolds around us. Who controls the corporations? Once again, follow the money. Always leads back to the Rothschilds' banking empire. But unfortunately, in our legal systems, corporations have more rights than living, breathing human beings. Think about that. This is unimaginable that something like this could even happen. Many people are shocked when they find out that every country in the world is registered as a corporation. And it's not just countries. It's states, provinces, cities, everything imaginable. The roads that we drive on are registered as corporations. Everything in our lives has been incorporated around us while we carry on and distracted by computer games and the news and who's screwing who and who won what game and what final is being played. While we're being distracted by the entertainment and the programming on our televisions, our world around us has been stolen from us and incorporated. And this is how, through the legal system and the corporations that have more rights than living, breathing human beings, we the people have become slaves to the corporations every step of the way.